Hello students, this is the Creepy Mayor here at the Creepy Pond with my favorite duck, Jed. Say hey everybody, Jed. Now we're here to help you with your Lichens lab. If y'all would go to PB Works and check out the Lichens lab page, you'll find we've got the lab report format and all the links you need to get the lab done. We've got the conclusion guidelines, there's the lab report format, there's the introduction and conclusion guidelines, and then there's also a link to the data table. As we go down the lab report, we know about abstract, the short version of what we did and what we found. The introduction, that's the background research. Follow these prompts. We went over these before class, before the lab, and we had a chance for you to catch up with your partners, so you should be pretty good on these. For materials and methods, there's a couple things you need to make sure to do. The first thing to make sure to do is to talk about some of the tricks we did to get this photograph, such as holding the iPad a meter away from the tree to try to make our pictures as standard as possible. And then also be sure to give details about the grid method we used to actually get our measurements. So talk about how you would actually hold up a grid over that picture to estimate our percentages for the percent coverage measurement. Also be sure to mention that we collected measurements of the largest specimen just by approximating that as a square. So anytime you have specialized measurement techniques in an experiment, you need to be sure to put those in your materials and methods to explain to a reader of your lab report where your measurements come from. So once again, with your materials and methods, explain in general, or not even general, explain specifically what we did, and then be sure to give extra emphasis to the measurement techniques for largest specimen and the method to get our percent coverage. Once you've done that, you need to include your 3 data tables, and don't just staple your lab notes. That's not a good lab report because it's going to be all out of order. So what you can do is you can either make a table electronically, or you can just leave some space and neatly put your 3 tables to show your window charts of how we got our percent coverage measures. And then notice that we also need to indicate our largest specimens. It's either way. You can do it with the square measurements or you can give us the result. But be sure you have the proper units as are indicated in this example. So in the data section, we need the window charts with your percent coverages, and we need the largest specimens. Be sure that that's in order with the rest of these steps here. For the analysis section, you need to do a graph. Now what you'll need to do is go to the spreadsheet, and since I've got it set to view only, what you're going to have to do is either copy and paste or just get the numbers and type it into your own spreadsheet. But once you have it into your own spreadsheet, highlight these 2 columns or these 2 rows right here. As a matter of fact, let me show you how to do this. I'm going to copy those numbers right there, and let's just say that I made my own sheet. And so I'm going to paste special for values only. That way I don't copy the formulas over. And so there's the headings, there's the numbers. Highlight, insert chart, and we want a column graph. And I'm not going to go through here putting in the chart title, but just to remind you, pick a good title for what this graph is indicating, percent coverage of lichens, or percent area coverage. Make a good title. Label your 2 axes with what they're measuring. So this would be type of site, for example. And then be sure to label the bars. You know, Google will color code them for you, but if you're printing out black and white, it's hard to tell. So just go back and hand label neatly what each bar corresponds to. And so we've got the title, axis labels, scales. Make sure that all your graphs follow our general rules. And that would be the analysis section. Then it comes to the error analysis. Once again, remember that error analysis is not why our data is bad or why there's mistakes on our data. If your data is bad or if you made mistakes, you don't publish that. You go back, repeat the experiment, and get a reliable data set. The whole purpose of error analysis is to talk about the concept of uncertainty. Why might there be uncertainty or maybe even some noise or variation in our data? Well, as we look at this example picture from one of the trees of the parking lot, we could, the first thing to think about is our measurement technique itself. Remember, this grid is an estimation, so there might be variance in people's various estimates. But using the grid helps us. Instead of just taking one look and taking a swing at it, what we do is we look closer, and the grid has some advantages. There's a general rule of uncertainty, and that is 20% of your smallest grid space, whether you're working with a grid, a piece of graph paper, or even a ruler, reading between the lines of a ruler, 20% of your smallest grid space equals your uncertainty. So each grid is 25 parts out of the whole, and so 20% of 25 gives us an overall uncertainty of 5%. So, to sum up, there could be some variance in how we estimated the coverage. Using a 4-square grid reduces the overall uncertainty to 5%. So we want to again talk about the variance and confidence level in our coverage data. Then we can also talk about is maybe some factors in the experiment itself that might put variance in individual data points. As you look at this tree, not all the trees were the same. Maybe some trees are better substrates or platforms for growing lichens, and we didn't control for that particular variable, but there is something we did do. There's also different size trees that we studied, and we didn't make any adjustments for that. Maybe a really skinny tree doesn't support a larger lichen. But here's what we did do. We're not basing this experiment on any single tree. What we did do about our uncertainty is we used lots of trees at each site and are basing our conclusions on an overall average of the entire site. So remember, when we do error analysis in this class, we talk about reasons why there might be variance, and then we also talk about what did we do to minimize the effects of that source of uncertainty. Two parts of it. Okay. All right. For the conclusion, summarize the trends discovered in the analysis. And so as we look at our graphs, we can clearly see that the farther away you get from traffic, the more lichens they are, and the bigger they are. When we talk about so we're giving a specific answer in the first bullet, and the second bullet we're talking about in general. Remember, the word proximity means closeness. All right, so give that answer there. And so then we start drilling down into some of the more scientific chemistry concepts of what's going on behind the scenes here. We don't just want to say there's more pollution. We want to be specific about the pollutants. Remember that under class products, we've got air pollutants. So use this as a resource for these bullets. And with cars, we want to focus on the nitrous oxides, which then contribute to ground level ozone. We'll just stay on this slide right here. From cars, they produce nitrous oxides, and VOC stands for volatile organic compounds. Those two things go together with light to form ground level ozone. The ozone and the particulates make smog. And so smog sometimes is called photochemical smog, photo being the light, and then the smog being the combination of the ground level ozone and the particulates. Okay. So one more time, nitrous oxides and volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, combine in the presence of sunlight. Sunlight kind of gives them that energy kick to make it happen, to produce ground level ozone. Ozone and particulates together make that hazy smog, which can really aggravate asthma and cause respiratory problems. feel free just to do some research on this as well. Make it make sense to you. Finally, what strategies can people use to minimize the impact of pollution from transportation sources? Be sure to give an advanced answer to this question. Don't just say people should ride their bikes, because we know in some cases where we live that's just not practical. So maybe talk about how what can cities do to encourage people to ride bikes, such as bike lanes, greenways. Also in cities, remember, we've got mass transit. And then make sure you remember CAFE, CAFE standards. CAFE standards, corporate average fuel economy. And if people are still driving cars, but they're driving more efficient cars, that could also serve to reduce the problems associated with the pollutants from cars. So I hope this helps you. I've enjoyed talking to you. Good luck on your labs, everybody.